Unemployment at 2 million, why is the government spending so much of the taxpayers' money bailing out bankers instead of helping people get back into jobs?
Ken Clark.
Well, you have to get the banking system to work. Banks are different from other things because we simply can't function without banks. Not only do we all need payment systems, but the big problem that's spread the banking mistakes into the rest of the economy is that ordinary businesses can't get credit anymore, no one can get money for investment, working capital short. That's what's turning all the economy down. So I'm afraid they're forced to do so. And the money they do have to spend, which I've urged them to spend at times and which I support them spending, is recapitalising the banks, trying to get rid of toxic assets. They should concentrate on that. They can't afford, because of the state of the public finances, to run up debt on everything else, which they've tended to do in a series of panic-stricken announcements. Of course, they should do something to help businesses directly, try to get them some more customers, mainly by getting their customers credit and ordinary banking facilities back again. They have produced a huge list of announcements about all kinds of schemes to help small, medium-sized businesses and so on. Those, I'm afraid, are mainly press releases so far. Trying to find any delivery on the ground, trying to find a small businessman who can get a loan at anything less than about 10% interest, trying to find anybody who can find the reality of all this marvellous campaigning that comes out of the government is so far very hard to find. And
are those what you call panic-struck announcements? Is that what you mean by that?
Well, they've always been left behind by events. So we've had a lot of packages announced, and then you find nothing has happened. What you do find is a quite staggering level of debt being accumulated. Some of this is necessary, but with every few £billion they're burning on things that haven't worked, we're all going to have to deal with that debt, and we'll be face to face with it as soon as the recovery in the economy starts.
So taxes are going to go up, you mean, once recovery comes?
I think you're going to have some careful planning to tackle the debt. Someone's got to produce, the government should produce in the next budget, a credible explanation of how we're going to get back to a sustainable level of debt. And all the indications are they're putting it off. And David Cameron's been making a speech today about debt, and we've got to work on debt. And when we get in, we will face a formidable problem of debt, or I say we will face, the country will face. It's not free money, this, and we have never gone into debt on this scale before.
Okay. Tessa Jowell.
Well, the spending on stabilising the banking system is in order to make sure that the economy can function, not to fund or support bankers as such, but to make sure that, for instance, when you go and put your card in the wall, your money comes out, so that businesses can actually borrow money in order that they too can continue to operate.
Bankers don't seem to have done too badly out of it, do they? Actually, when you say it's not to help them,
in the past,
done rather well.
the future will be different. But specifically, your question about employment and unemployment, which is very important indeed. Yes, we are spending a lot of money, and the money that we are spending was opposed by the Conservative government, spending money on making all the services available for people who lose their jobs, there for them as quickly as possible, because what is absolutely crucial is preventing people who lose their jobs today becoming part of the long-term unemployed.
May I ask what's being spent now that we oppose that's giving people all these jobs?
1.3 billion on improving Job Centre Plus, boosting the number of advisors, speeding up the number of interviews, making it a more easy-to-use service for people who lose their jobs. So that's what we're spending money on. And it's also important to remember, I mean, the unemployment figures are very bad indeed, and people are very worried about the prospects for their own jobs. But it's also just worth remembering that there are vacancies. 250,000 people came off JSA, Job Seekers Allowance, in February. And all the effort of the government is going into getting people back to work as quickly as possible and not doing what happened in the last recession, allowing people to become long-term unemployed, which in the long run means for very many people that they're on the scrap heap.
saying 250,000 people come off JSA. The reason 250,000 people come off JSA is because they're being put into 6-week, 7-week courses where they can actually write letters and do CVs. Technically, to government figures, that's not them on JSA anymore. There is no work out there, and what work there should have been for Londoners, the Olympics as such, you know, a London Olympics built by Londoners, it's not being built by Londoners, it's being built by EU and other people coming over to this country. There's no country. Let's not go there for a moment. The person at the back there, yes.
It's quite likely, though, that a number of Labour MPs will also be seeking jobs in the near future with taxpayers and, just as personally, voters voting out by holding you to account for the decisions you've made in the banking industry.
OK. Vince Cable, people are very astonished at the amount that's been spent on the banks, and the implication of this is it could have been better spent getting people back into jobs. Do you agree with that?
I think people are right to be astonished. I mean, staggering sums of money have been spent saving banks that would otherwise have collapsed. And we're talking primarily here about the Royal Bank of Scotland, which is one of the world's biggest banks, Lloyds, HBOS and Northern Rock, of course, that was taken over. Barclays are negotiating for money, but not for a takeover. Now, the question is this. With all this taxpayers' money going into the banks, are we getting anything in return? And the problem is that despite the fact that this programme has now been going for 5 months, there's very little evidence that the banks are actually doing what you, the public, because you now own it, want them to do, which is making sure that their capital goes out to support good businesses. There are enormous numbers of companies in this country that are doing very well. They're very good companies. They cannot get capital to just pay the monthly wages. They can't get working capital, and the banks should be providing that. There are all kinds of abuses going on, you know, excessive pay and bonuses. The thing that's been unearthed this week about big banks, Barclays in this case, avoiding taxation. I mean, these are things that should have been stamped out when the government money went in. So, of course, the other speakers are right that the government had no alternative but to try to put more capital in the bank, because if the banks had collapsed, we'd have gone back, frankly, to being a barter economy. But having put the money in, they've now got to act in the public interest, and they're not doing that yet.
Just to follow that up, really, in the unlikely event that this present government are able to stabilise the banking system, do we really want to continue with this type of banking system? Do we want something else? Do we want the banking system to be controlled by the people, I should say, by the government, or should it be in private hands? Because I don't want to go back to what we've just been through. I do not want to see the level of suffering that is developing in society recreated time and time again. It's got to be the end for that type of banking, that type of privatisation, that kind of way of running society.
Okay. Douglas Murray.